Keep admitting.
Hello, I'm here to give a little tutorial on how to put together a MyOpenMath or IMathAS question. Um, I know that a lot of people use them, and is there any way I can share my screen?
Yes, you should be able to. Everyone's allowed.
Okay, share and screen one. And there's my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
I put together this little setup of creative questions, and you can get access to it by logging into MyOpenMath, clicking on Home, Add New Course, Copy from my or a colleague's course, look up using course ID. And the course ID is right here. Let me see if I can't somehow make this big text bigger. There's the course ID right here. And it shouldn't ask you for enrollment key. I think I made it about as public as I can make it. And the name of the course is Creating IMathAS Questions. And and in there you should see this. If you actually make a copy of the course, you can see it right here, the creative questions. And I'd like to step through, say, the anatomy of a typical question. I've outlined it here in the notes, but let's go to an example I created. I'll go to questions, a calculated example. I'll go to this one. It's a very straightforward one, I think. And I'm going to click on edit code. Don't let this bother you. If you have something like this, that's fine. You have your own copy. It has to do with the library. I don't want to get into this business here. But of course, creating your own question, to create your own question, you'd actually start somewhere else. But let's just go through this first. The first thing you would see is something like this and ask you to enter in a description. I just put down a calculated example. And there's the use rights, the license, that typical business there. You can decide to do that as you wish. I just want to make sure I can see people here. And then the library assignment, that's a little bit separate, but that's how you work. There are a set of libraries, and you can make it so the question you have is in various libraries. But I didn't want to get into that because that's not really the coding part of it. Really, where I want to start is right here, question type. That's where it all starts. And if you click on that, you'll see a drop down for all sorts of types of questions. And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on all of them by any means. But for example, here is calculated. This is an example of a calculated question. I select on calculated. Why? What does that mean? What it means is that the student will be able to answer a formula for calculating an answer rather than an explicit number itself. And which is slightly different. It's something I sort of would like to push in math because it changes the emphasis. Notice here, there's a number answer, a numeric answer. And what this does, if you select this, is it requires a number, the student to enter in a number that is correct, as opposed to this sort of thing here, calculated, where say they go through a process and they can just type in the process for calculating that number. In other words, they don't need to use a calculator. They can just enter in square root of 5 plus 2, and that will be satisfactory. Okay. Another thing I wish to point out is that these questions involve multiple technologies, and a critical thing to have in front of you is, can you see, is the IMathAS documentation. You really can't, in general, you probably won't be doing this as a 5 days a week job. And so having these notes of the IMathAS notes, it's a documentation on how to create a question. And it's not all the documentation you want, but if I can hold it up here, it's the writing questions part of it. There's a table of contents at the top, and you want the writing questions part. Another technology the questions use is IMathAS, and I have included a link here in the notes of how that goes. It's very intuitive, and that's why people like it. IMathAS examples, that I included another link there for you to look at for more examples of its use. And in fact, I created, also have another link to a place where you can type in IMathAS, try it out for yourself. That's an IMathAS practice. I went through this. There are in fact 4 different languages used in the process of creating an IMath question. There's the IMathAS itself, which is really just PHP. There's IMath, which is a way in which calculations are typed in terms of ASCII. In other words, we turn mathematics into ASCII. And it's also used as a technology for displaying the equations. So the IMath is used in 2 different ways in a particular question. Another 2 technologies that go hand in hand are HTML and cascading style sheets. Those are just ways of making it pretty, of laying things out, and they're less critical, but nevertheless useful when trying to make questions clear to a student. Right here, you can see for this particular question, what's the general process for a question. And feel free to ask any questions if you want. Just chirp in. Because I'm pretty, if you've put something in a chat, I probably won't see it because I'm pretty focused on my screen's real estate's focused right here. So,
Dr. Brown?
Yes.
I just typed in the chat, where might I find your session notes?
They're right. These are my, do I have to hit something else to publish them or something? These are,
don't think so. They should be in the Hoover if they go.
Session notes. It's in the Hoover. Hoover session. That's where I placed it.
Yeah, I don't know if other people have access to your session notes. Like I don't have that as an option on my.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. How do I make those public to people? Is there a particular? Not really.
That's all right. You don't have to. Maybe towards the end you could post it or figure out after the talk.
If you go into MyOpenMath, and let me see, where's the chat on this thing?
Here, I can write.
I'll click on OK. And let me see more, the chat. There, I'll type it. I got the chat up. Okay, there we go. It's, you go into MyOpenMath, and then I'm posting in the chat right here. Control V. You go there. And Control C. The course ID is this. You shouldn't need it, but nevertheless, That's there. And just so you know, yes, should be something like this. I kind of like to walk through creating a question, but there really is, there's not much time here. And so I kind of want to describe one of the examples I put forward, because unless you have some sort of, I don't know, does anyone here have a background with computer programming, with PHP or anything of this nature? Okay. The primary PHP is the primary technology used to create this application. And PHP was originally designed for what's called, say you go to an Amazon.com page site, right? There's a database. Amazon has a database of all its products with all the information in there. When you click on a particular item, say, I don't know, towels or something, some towel product, then what happens is a web page is being presented to you, but it's being created dynamically. And the software that helps create that web page for you is PHP. It's done at the server farm at Amazon, wherever, it's not really a place, but at Amazon. It sees your request. You say, oh, this person wants an order to look at the product towels. And so it gathers all the information and wraps it up into a nice, pretty web page for you to see. For MyOpenMath, what we're doing is when a student clicks on show question, it's going to the MyOpenMath website. It's saying a student wants to look at so-and-so question. It uses the PHP to dynamically create the question, wrap it up as a nice little pretty HTML page to present to the student. That's the fundamentals of how it works. Now, in PHP, unlike a lot of languages, I hope you can see this here. I'm going to broaden this out. I want this here. In PHP, there are variables, and all variables in PHP start with this $ thing. And the way this works is that there are two parts to the question, to creating a question. There's this common control part, and there's the question text part. The question text part is the part the student sees. The common control part is the part that you control. That is the programming part, so to speak. And so in the question text part, you typically see HTML, and you also see, if you can see this, like for example, $ title, $ payout text, $ fee text, and things of this nature. When you see a $ and then a variable, which it's highlighted quite nicely, then what it does is it's taking the variable value from the common control part and inserting it in that place. For example, for this question here, let's say you can see that it says title, and suppose you're in a carnival and there's a booth where you can pay, and it says fee text. I'll just take a look here. And instead of where you can pay, where it says fee text, it displays a randomly generated value. And payout text, you can see payout text right here. Here it outputs a randomly generated value. And right here, there's also this special variable called answer box, where the MyOpenMath inputs an answer box for the student to enter into. And in fact, they could, in my view, I have the little key, answer key, it also displays that. So this is the output in the question text. But you have to tell the computer how to generate these numbers, and you also need to tell it how to compare. What is the answer? What should it be comparing it to? And finally, you want to also tell it how to present and some other variables in the question that might be helpful. And I've noticed with a lot of MyOpenMath questions, there are a few things that a lot of questions don't do that, in my view, should be emphasized a little bit more, because it cuts down on confusion for the student. You're not, often the student's doing that at home, and it's very easy to think they understand something, but they don't. Okay, so how does this go? Here for the common control, how do we program these random values? What you see here is, for example, I put in the first line of this, in PHP is line by line. There are no semicolons. If you hit enter, a new line means a new line of code. $ end digits. I made end digits all capital because that's what I do when I have some special constant. I don't like to have too many magic constants running around my code. And so I just made that an idiom. Then I have $payout. Random, this says generate a random number between integer, I should say, between 0 and 5, and add 4. This is how it's generating the payout value of, say, $5. But notice this number right now is just the number 5. For this particular question, it'd just be the number 5. Here, I program another variable I call fee, $fee, where it says generate a random number between 1 and 3 with a 0.1 step side. That is a 0.1. Notice that this is 1.2. That's a number between 1 and 3 with at 0.1 intervals. And there's this where clause. This is a little bit different than standard PHP. This is distinct to IMathAS. You can put a where clause and a condition for it, so that what's happening here is that the IMathAS, when you give it a random generation function such as this, it'll create a number. This where clause lets you say, no, I don't like that number. Roll again. Try again. And then finally, so that's what this is. In other words, these two lines entail the randomization element of my program. The end digits, the payout, the fee, and then finally, this is net winnings. This is a value of interest to me. These are all variables that I invented for myself for the sake of this particular problem. In IMath question, there are two distinct types of variables. There are variables that the user creates distinct to a particular question, and that's what these are. Then there are also variables that are for the IMath system itself. And you can see in this next section here, where I say describe the answer types of values and tolerances, These variables are nicely, they're in like this aqua green as opposed to this blue here. These are special variables that configure how the program works, essentially. For example, this special variable here, answer, that's how you tell the program what the answer is. When a student types something in the answer box, it will get some value out. It'll be a string in it, but it may reinterpret that string as a number and compare it to this net winnings number. If it is equal to the net winnings number, then the student is correct. This answer variable is very, very important. Yeah, you gotta set the answer variable so it knows what to compare the entry into against. There's another special variable called, well, there's two variables, absolute tolerance, and there's also this relative tolerance. That's what the abs or the rel means. You can choose either one of these. In my view, a lot of times, questions in MyOpenMath will ask the student to enter in a value. And sometimes the tolerance is set to be too fine. In other words, a student, in particular with graphing questions, the student will enter something in and their intent will be correct. But say the computer computes the number, they compute their number, they enter it, it's not exactly equal to the number you computed, but they went through the process correctly. It was some sort of rounding or intermediate answer. For whatever reason, it's a little different than what you put in, but it's still correct. This tolerance factor is critical. In my view, you should always put in a tolerance. And the default tolerance is a relative tolerance of 0.001. That is 0.1%. And usually often I'll say that's too small. So in other words, so these two variables, answer and tolerance variable, whichever one you choose, that is what's used to compare what the student inputs and checks to see if it's correct. Now, there are also things that you can also do to describe this answer box here. See, I have this ants prompt variable. It's a special IMathAS variable. It describes how this appears here. And I also think this one's very important because notice here I have little ants like that, and it's in italics. And it also has the $sign right there. This is another issue I've seen over and over lots of MyOpenMath questions is they want I've had students say, why am I entering this incorrectly? Why is it marking it wrong? And it's because they didn't put a $sign in there. My default is to put down like a $sign or some sort of units in here so the student knows they only need to enter a number of some sort. And this is one way of clarifying. This ants prompt will put something in front of the box. And you can see here, this is HTML markup, ants, and a little space there, and then a $sign. This $sign here is not the same as the by the way, is not the same as the $sign for variables. It just so happens that this is the coding $sign. This is the moolah $sign right here. And here's another critical variable that I also think is very important, and that is the show answer variable. Okay. This variable here what it does is no, the student will click like will click on show answer, or maybe you do when you're showing the students, you're walking through a question with them. And oftentimes what you'll see is that the question, say it computes the square root of 2 or something, you'll see decimals fly off. I mean, it's just like 20 decimals there. And not only that, but it'll ask in the question, it'll say, answer to within 3 decimals. But the answer, when they click on solution, it's not the 3 decimals, it's like the 50 decimals or something. This configures how, when you click, the student clicks on show answer, or when you click on show answer, how it's presented. And again, it's not mandated, but this is something that really helps the clarity for the student. In other words, if you find that this sort of mechanism isn't working, add a show answer. And there are functions. Notice this says pretty real. It takes the answer value, it rounds it off to 2 decimal places and displays it as a real number, like money, which is what I want. Okay, so here what we've done is we've created a random values. We've used those random values to generate an answer. We've told the tolerance we want. We've given the answer box size. This just makes it so it seems the size of the box is sort of close to what the student would expect. We know we give them the prompt to answer. Now the final part is that we want to present the inputs, what the student wants to know, to them in the question text. When we generate numbers, the numbers we generate won't necessarily be pretty or in the format we'd so desire. Unfortunately, you cannot take the variables, these variables like the phi variable, if you put it straight in there, it won't be present nicely. So what you do is you create helper variables that allow you to display the values like you wish them to. So for example, if you have a question and you see a number being displayed like you don't like it to, then what you would like to do is create a new variable, use what's called the display macros, the functions that help you edit them or change the way they appear, and then use that instead. I saw I had a quick warning. That's a lightning review of how it goes. But I would like somebody must have a question about something or other. I mean, it's a lot coming at you, and there's a tech, like I said, it takes 4 technologies. But if you look at the other questions, the key thing here, takeaway here is 1, this answer variable. This is the thing the computer is comparing against. Okay, yes. Go ahead, please, just chip right in.
Thank you so much for showing all of this. I'm just curious, do you know if MyOpenMath is accessible and usable with the screen reader?
It's MyOpenMath is HTML based. So I'm not sure if a student has, say, vision disability or something of this nature, they may be able to do that. Of course, there's also just the zoom in with the thing. So it's all presented in HTML, and I'm not sure.
Oh, I meant the interface when they're actually working on the problems.
Right. It's still HTML.
Okay.
It's still HTML. Is there a special mechanism? I don't think MyOpenMath necessarily has a special mechanism where you Yeah, okay. They aimed to. I'm not sure about whether there's some sort of widget you can hit such that it automatically takes everything and makes it bigger. Certainly within HTML, you can change font sizes and whatnot. That's my only awareness there. I don't think there's a programmatic way of addressing that issue. Let me put it that way. I never saw that in any of the documentation.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, thank you. You could probably spend all day doing a full day workshop on this sort of thing to learn how to all the bells and whistles. I mean, if you just look at it, there's lots of different types of questions here, but they all fall in this format where you declare user variables that generate things randomly. That's why you're using the PHP, is so you can randomly generate values. You're figuring out the answer, and you're telling the MyOpenMath what that answer is. And then you're telling MyOpenMath how to display the various quantities and how to display the answer. So those are the three stages there that you need to know to look at how these things are done. It's also important to know that there are user variables, and then there are very special IMathAS variables and it's important to discern the difference between the two, because these have special meaning. Answer box size right here, that changes this, and it's just baked into the system. And yeah.
Okay, Leah, it looks like we are at time here.
Okay.
I will just, I think in a couple of minutes here, we're right at the last session of the day.
Oh, okay.
Words and things like that. So I know that they like us to end pretty on time. So the team
Okay.
can bump us into the next Zoom room. But thank you very much for
Now,
really intriguing